going to take no? I think we need a chazar of Shal Shudas.
Shal Shudas. That's the one that you need chazar. That's like the easiest thing I said. Yeah, that'll be good. Yeah, the tea's good.
I have some lemon tea in the shower. That's like
whatever is good. All right. Oh, do we have a phone to record? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You make believe you don't understand because you want to hear what you want to hear again. He does. You make believe you don't understand, so you hear it again.
It's an eitzah. All right. Okay, so let's learn. So session this morning we'll finish off the Sugi and Sefer Yehoshua, at least that specific Sugi and Sefer Yehoshua that we've been dealing with for the past few weeks. So just to get back into it, B'kitzer. So again, we've been talking about the inyan, the covenant that was made by Har Grizim and Har Eivel. So basically it boiled down to machlokes between Rebbe Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel. Just very quickly to sum it, to bring us back into the sugya. So we know that according to Chazal, the Kabbalah Satar, the covenant that was made for Kol HaTorah Kula between Hashem and the Jewish people, Chazal had a tradition, it had to happen in 3 stages. So that's for sure. So the sheet of Rabbi Shmuel was that the 3 stages included Har Grizim and Har Eivel. So number 1 was Har Sinai / Mishkan, because the Kolalim were given by Sinai, Pratim by Mishkan, so Sinai Mishkan is 1. Next was by Arvis Moav before we entered into Eretz Yisrael, Sefer Dvarim, that's the 2nd stage. And the final stage is Har Grizim and Eivel. So Har Grizim and Eivel is the covenant for Kabbalah Satar. Thank you very much. So that is the sheet of Rabbi Shmuel. The sheet of Rebbe Akiva is not like that. The sheet of Rebbe Akiva was that the 3 parts of Kabbalah Satar already happened before Har Grizim and Eivel. Yeah, Har Sinai, everything was given then. Mishkan, everything was repeated. And Arvis Moav, before entering Eretz Yisrael, also repeated again. So that takes care of Kabbalah Satar. What is Har Grizim and Har Eivel? So Har Grizim and Eivel was something else. So the Gemara told us that, according to the opinion of Rebbe Akiva, everything, the covenant of Har Grizim and Eivel, even though it lists over there 10 or 11 different mitzvahs, different inyanim that Klal Yisrael were accepting, the Gemara says that basically those are all just different mushals and different ways to express one nekuda, which is Eishes Ish, that the couple should be faithful to each other. It was the Jewish people accepting in all different ways, in all different avenues and angles, the din of Eishes Ish, the Isser of Eishes Ish. So that's what the Gemara says. Now again, that itself needed explanation. Sepis, like that inyan of Eishes Ish is what we need another Kabbalah Satar for. Okay, so we saw from the Nitziv in a number of places that the inyan of Har Grizim and Har Eivel, and he doesn't quote this Gemara with Rebbe Akiva and Eishes Ish, but on his own he explains that the covenant that was made by Har Grizim and Har Eivel was a covenant that the Jewish people accepted upon themselves, basically to be Ar L'Goyim, to be a light unto the nations. And the Nitziv explained that unique covenant that was made, that covenant was made to the Jewish people, started off as a bris that was between Hashem and Avram Avinu. When Avram Avinu was given the name Avraham, Av Hamoin Goyim, that he should be the father of many nations, that was a chiyuv, that was a bris, that was a shlichus that he was being given, that he should not just teach Yidden Torah, and not just convert Goyim to become Yidden if they so choose, but even Goyim that want to remain Goyim, that you should be able to be mashpia and be a light for them. And so the Nitziv explained that bris with Avram Avinu was then made with Klal Yisrael by Har Grizim and Har Eivel. And so we explained, that was the last thing that we spoke about, is that, okay, so now you have 2 things going on by Har Grizim and Eivel. You have Eishes Ish, like, there's 2 sides. There's like between us and Hashem, there is a covenant being made about Eishes Ish. And then there's this other inyan that Nitziv introduces, which is our obligation as being an Ar L'Goyim. So what is the? So we explain that based on the Nitziv as well, but more from Rav Kook, the Talmud of the Nitziv, that Rav Kook explained that in order to truly be mashpia all the way, b'chlal to be mashpia on people, but b'frat the nations of the world, to be mashpia on them, it depends on a person being more deeply rooted in the inner pneumistic light and yichud of Yiddishkeit. When Yiddishkeit is a system of rules and regulations, in the language of Rav Kook, how he put it is that no one wants to hear rules and regulations. The Goyim certainly do not want to hear rules and regulations. And so if our role is to be mashpia on them, it's impossible to do that in a healthy way, in a productive way, in a way that they'll accept it without causing tsaris. The only way to do that is if we are deeply attached to the side of Yiddishkeit, to the yichud of Yiddishkeit, which is the root of where those rules and regulations come from. But if we connect to the soul, to the pnimius deke hiskashers between the chassan and kala deke side of Yiddishkeit, between us and the Rebbeinu Shalom, and from that vantage point, that's how we perceive and view the rules and regulations of Yiddishkeit. So from there, we'll be able to then give over a Yiddishkeit to the rest of the world. That's not just simply rules and regulations. They'll be able to pick up, even when we communicate the rules and regulations of Yiddishkeit to the nations of the world, whatever is relevant to them, if from us it's coming from a place of yichud, then they'll pick up on that as well. And the Mela, they'll be receptive to it. So our ability to be a healthy Or Lagayim depends on our understanding that Yiddishkeit boils down to an Inun Chassan and Kala Teishasish. And that's the combination, that's what was going in Bargis and Revel. The more deeply we can, absorb the very core of Yiddishkeit, from which all the pratim are coming from, which is the Inun of Eishasish. Hashem is the Chassan, we're the Kala, the Inun of Yichud. And from that place, see all the details and all the rules and regulations coming from that place of yichud, then automatically it could go further, it could go beyond our boundaries into the nations of the world, and it won't be perceived and it won't be picked up on as just telling them what to do and just creating guilt and a sense of being boxed in. It'll be intuitively they'll pick up also that this is coming from an opportunity to be, that we're giving them an opportunity to be involved in this unbelievable, relationship between human beings and the Creator. And that's something that we'll pick up on. And the Mela, that's the connection between the two brises. That's what we spoke about last time. So today what we're going to do is going to go just a little bit deeper into this, and more specifically addressing a question, which is, so practically, what does this mean? This means that we have to literally go out and teach the Goyim, and what are we supposed to teach? And what does it exactly mean to be an Or Goyim, practically speaking? So before we even begin, obviously it's important to know halachically, right? So we all know that Goyim are obligated in Shevet Tzvei Noach, right? Shevet Tzvei Noach, we're obligated in 613. Now the Rambam does write in Hilchos Malachim, you don't have this in front of you, but it is good to know. I spoke about this once before. The Rambam does write in Hilchos Malachim that on Har Sinai, Moshe Rabbeinu commanded us that not just to let us know that Goyim are obligated in Shevet Tzvei Noach. The Rambam writes, it's before that our chiyuv, we are mechuyev to teach the Goyim about Shevet Tzvei Noach. So there is actual content, actual information that the Jewish people are obligated to teach to the nations of the world. That's for sure. And those are the mitzvahs of Shevet Tzvei Noach. Things that are not Shevet Tzvei Noach, pure Torah, Adrabah, we're obligated not to teach them. Like Rosh Akilas Yaakov. Again, there's nuances in Torah Shebachsav versus Torah Shebal Peh. There's different pratim. We're not going into that particular sugya, but B'derech Klal, when it comes to actual material, so Shevet Tzvei Noach we're obligated to teach. Things that are not Shevet Tzvei Noach, generally speaking, we're obligated dafka not to teach. So when it comes to teaching that material, that's primarily what we were speaking about last week. That in order to give over, and that's really what Cook was trying to talk about, to give over actual instructional information, do this, don't do that, what you're not allowed to do, and so on, and influence the Goyim in that way, then if it's coming, if the teacher, right, if the preacher, if the Jew that's preaching this to the nations of the world himself sees Yiddishkeit in that very chitzoniistic away, not an ishus, a yichudik away, then certainly the goyim are just going to pick up on this Jew trying to tell them what to do, and that usually doesn't end well. So, in that context, in terms of information, what to teach, and then that's what we saw from the Tziv, the Rav Kook, that if it's emanating from a place of yichud, and in the person himself, these rules and regulations of Yiddishkeit are seen not as a prison, but as a way to express and to live in that place of yichud, then when you communicate that, even the one listening to that, receiving that instruction, is going to sense and feel the love and the warmth and the opportunity that you're offering. So that's true for Goyim, and the truth is, it's true for Yidden too. It's true for Yidden too, that in order to actually communicate and to be mashpia technicalities and to give mussar and things like that, so it has to, if the one that's giving it over himself personally sees those rules and regulations as emanating from a place of yichud, people will be more receptive to it. But that's really in terms of the practicalities, the actual teaching of Shabbos V'nei Noach. But that's not really what the pasuk says. When the pasuk defines our role for the Goyim, certainly, let's put it this way: that role that we have to teach the Goyim Shabbos V'nei Noach, that's mitzad tarek mitzvahs. Like that's the Rambam is writing in Hilchos Malachim, that we as Yidden are mechuyev because as Torah's Moshe to teach the Goyim Shabbos V'nei Noach. That's part of our chiyuv. Like we saw this a couple weeks ago from the Gemara in Saita, that every mitzvah that we were given, it contained 4 parts: to learn it, to teach it, lishmar v'lasis. So every single mitzvah, part of the mitzvah is to teach it. To teach it to who? Obviously to people that it's appropriate for. So when we were given the mitzvah of not to kill, so part of that mitzvah is to learn about the halachas of not to kill and to teach about it. To teach it to who? Well, to anyone that it's relevant to, which is Goyim also. So the obligation to teach Shav Mitzvah V'nei Noach, that's part of our personal chiyuvim anyway. It's really part of our chiyuvim. So it's just a matter of how to communicate it. If it's coming from a place of yichud, it'll be more receptive. But when the pasuk really wants to define our role and our unique responsibility in just teaching Goyim and influencing Goyim, the lashon of the pasuk is to be an arla Goyim, to be a light to the nations. And that's what we're going to be investigating today. That this inyan of being a light to the nations is telling us something that's beyond the technical details of Shav Mitzvah Noach, what to say to them and how to say it to them. Arla Goyim is something else. That's what we're going to be learning today. Now, another thing that we have to figure out as well, just to tie up all the loose ends, is that why is all of this revealed to us through Rebbe Akiva? Why is Rebbe Akiva the one to reveal to us this inyan of Har Grizman Reivel? Again, remember, this is all in Rebbe Akiva. Rebbe Shmuel, Har Grizman Reivel is just part of Kabbalah Torah. But in Rebbe Akiva, that Kabbalah already happened, the 3 parts. So what's Har Grizman Reivel? This new inyan, basically being an Arla Goyim in a healthy, productive way. So it's Dafka Rebbe Akiva. So Sep is Rebbe Akiva. Okay, another thing to think about with Rebbe Akiva, again, then we'll begin inside, is that, everyone knows there's a basic rule that says v'chai behem, that you're not supposed to give up your life for any mitzvah like that. So we know that there's exceptions to that, right? So you have to be Meiser Nefesh, or there's halachas of when the Goyim, when there's a gezerah against Yiddishkeit, so then the halacha is that also you have to be Meiser Nefesh. Although over there, I mean, there's pratim to this. There's pratim to this, but the many Rishonim, for example, is that we pass in the Shulchan Aruch, is that even when the Goyim put a gezerah against Klal Yisrael Chas v'Shalom to mevatel something in Yiddishkeit, you have to be Meiser Nefesh only if they're forcing a violation. But if it's b'shavi al tasa, it wouldn't be a problem. So l'mashal, if the Chas v'Shalom there's a gezerah not to wear tefillin, so it's shavi al tasa, so there wouldn't be a halach of Yahar Vel Yavar for that. If they're forcing a person to do something aser, then that's Yahar Vel Yavar. If they're doing it lahachas. Why am I mentioning this? So everyone knows that the Ma'aseh of Rebbe Akiva was killed al Kiddush Hashem eventually. For what? So the Gemara says he was killed al Kiddush Hashem for teaching Torah Barabim. There was a decree against teaching Torah Barabim, and that was something that he wasn't. That was a gezerah, and Rebbe Akiva was teaching Torah Barabim. And so everyone knows the famous story that the Gemara says that one of the Talmidim went to Rebbe Akiva and said, Rebbe, like, how are you teaching Barabim? It's mamash sakana. So he said the famous mashal with the fish, right? The fish is swimming very fast and chaotically through the river, And the fox asks the fish, "What are you doing?" So he says, "I got a fisherman that's trying to catch me." So the fox says, "Come on dry land, you'll be okay." Fox, you're supposed to be smart. That's dipshits. If I stay in the water, I might be caught, but I might not be. I come out of the water, so I'm for sure dead. So said Rebbe Akiva, to not teach Torah, that's called death itself. So I might as well teach. If I survive, I survive it. But if I don't, it's vaday. So the question of first, and that's what. So eventually he continues teaching, and Mele is killed. The question is, how are you allowed to do such a thing? Xer was not. You're not allowed to learn. Xer was you're not allowed to teach Torah Rabbah. So don't teach Torah Rabbah. It's Shevi Al Tasa. Shevi Al Tasa. There's no lach of Yarv Al Yavar for that. So how do you explain it? So. And it's interesting. The Rebbe Akiva didn't answer Yarv Al Yavar. You know, it's a Shas Hashmad. That's not what he answers. He's this whole mashal with a fish and a fox. Like you're gonna die because of a mashal like this. So there's a Torah from the Ishbitzer. So they quotes this a few places. The Ishbitzer was mechadish that all these halachas of the Gimel Veres Chamuras and all the halachas of Yarv Al Yavar and all these things, those are klom that every Jew has to follow. But the Ishbitzer said, but there are certain mitzvahs that if you're sensitive enough, the person might know to pick up that this is the very sharish on neshama of who the person is. And those mitzvahs that are the sharish of your neshama, it's Yarv Al Yavar, no matter what the situation is. Shevi Al Tasa Kum V'Asei Yarv Al Yavar. Sharish Nishmas Rebbe Akiva was deeply bound not just to Torah, but to teach Torah B'Rabbah. And so now for Rebbe Akiva, it doesn't fit in the regular rules and regulations of Yarv Al Yavar, true, but for Rebbe Akiva that was Sharish Nishmasai. So for Rebbe Akiva, you have to die al Kiddush Hashem even for such a thing, and that's the mashal he gives with the fox. Like it's a personal zach. I'm not telling you anyone else to do this. Rebbe Akiva wasn't telling all the other chachamim to teach Torah B'Rabbah. For Rebbe Akiva, that was his end.
That's what I said. That is death.
That is death, right? That's mitzias. For him, that would be cutting off the sharish of his neshama. So that's an interesting thing. So you have to think about that. V'sepis Sharish Nishmas Rebbe Akiva is teaching Torah B'Rabbah. Okay, so let's begin like this. So Marmukah number one that you have in front of you is a pasuk that we quoted this last week, pasuk in Yeshaya. It's more famous in the English, old English, a light unto the nations. But this is the pasuk that Tzarcha, that Tencha, Hashem says, I fashioned you, and I have placed you lebris am to be with a special covenant. That's my nation. La'argoyim, be a light to the nations. La'argoyim. Okay, so as I mentioned before, this Indian of being a light to the nations is more than just our obligation to teach Shav Mitzvah Neinaich. Again, our chiyuv to teach Shav Mitzvah Neinaich is fundamentally part of our own personal chiyuvim to teach whatever mitzvahs are relevant to whoever they're relevant to. So that's not the chiddush. Being an Ar Lagayim is something else. So what does it mean to be an Ar Lagayim? Is there something to teach? Like, what does it mean to be an Ar? Why is it using this language of Ar? So Marmukah number two. So this is part of a mimer from it's a very long one, but this is a very small piece of a very, very long mimer. Taf Reish Ayin Beis. This is from the Rebbe Rashab of Lubavitch. This is really just one place that he mentions it. This is a yesod that you find in many, many places, especially by the Rashab's writings, that he talks about this Indian. And again, he's not talking about this Indian of Ar Lagayim, but just Derech Klal, the Indian of light. Light. Ar is a commonly used word when it comes to P'nimius HaTorah. And it's used in all different ways. But why do we use the word light or to describe the hashpah from the Rebbe Shalom to us? Life, chiyas, Torah are. What's this Indian of light? So this is what he says like this. We'll read it together. Mukubalim mishtamshem al piroi b'loshen ar. B'derech klal mukubalim like using a loshen of light. V'achokrim and philosophers, they more like using B'lashon Shefa. Okay, that's what in Mar Nevuchim and other places, the Rambam Rishonim use a Lashon of Shefa. Shefa Eloki, as opposed to light. Mekubalim will use the light of their Rebbe Shalom. Philosophers will use more of a Shefa of their Rebbe Shalom. What's the difference? The difference is as follows. The Shefa Myra, when it comes to Shefa, he says Shefa Myra al Ashpa, he eza mahus davar, shenishbel makabel. Shefa is usually a word that's describing an actual substance or something that's like almost tangible that you could point to and say this was given from the giver to the receiver. So for example, hashpa is tzedakah, right? So tzedakah, so charity, right? So it's the actual money. So it goes from the rich person to the poor person. That there's an actual thing that is being given over from one person to another. Or water, for example, that's flowing from one place to another. Also, the word shefa can be used for water. Shefa yamin, right? The pasuk says. So, in other words, so shefa always is a word describing something being given over, but what is being given over is something tangible. All right, water is something, and it's moving from one place to another. And so he says like this, and because of that, whenever hashpa is taking place in that way of shefa, is geremes shinoi v'chesar v'mashpia. It because it's something that was until now by the mashpia, and now it's moving to the makabel, so there's a change in the mashpia. So let's say, for example, with the tzedakah example, the ashir has less. The water example, that place that the water flowed from is drier now. There's less water there. There's a change in the mashpia, and certainly there's a change in makabel for sure, but there's a change in the mashpia. So when water flows, they're being taken away, right, from where they're originating from. So that place has less water. That's what shefa is. Omnam inyan ar, but what does ar mean? Ar is something different. Ar hu shezeu ha'ar levad. So first, he's going to describe that there's a mila and chesar into each one. But we'll like this. What does ar mean? Ar is an expression of also a level of hashpa, but where the hashpa that's being given over is not tangible. It's not tangible. Shezeu ha'ar levad. It's just a ha'ara. What's the word ha'ara? Illumination. It's not the thing itself. It's a ha'ara. I'll give an example. It's not an actual piece, so to speak, of the mashpia, giving over to the makabel. Let's say when it comes to money. So if you think about it, like what Baitznak is, that you're literally taking a piece of your portfolio, of your estate, of your, rechush, and you're taking a piece of that literally and giving it over to someone else. That's the mitzvah tzedakah. So because of that, there's an actual it's an actual piece of the etzem, of the thing, right? In other words, the thing in the context of tzedakah, we're talking about a person's rechush. So you're taking a piece of that and giving it to someone else. So that means the thing that's being given over is a zach. It's a piece of something, and it causes a shinui in the mashpia because now there's less of his rechush. It's kedai to do, but that's what happens. Or is something else. Or is when the hashpah is taking place in such a way where it's not a thing from the mashpia being taken from him and given to someone else. What is being influenced and what is being given over to the receiver is a ha'ara. It's an extension of the mashpia. It's not a piece of him. I'll give an example to explain. So he says, "Ukamay orviz of hashemesh," like the light of a sun. That's light. It's like a sun. When the sun illuminates planet Earth, it's not like a piece of the sun is being broken off and being thrown down to planet Earth. It's not the way it works. The sun is illuminated. The sun is light. The sun is whatever the sun is, right? And from there, illumination extends beyond the sun. And if there's planets to be makabelit, then good. So Earth is able to receive the sunlight in a healthy way, so we receive it. This type of hashpah, because it's not a thing being taken from the mashpia and given to the makabel and so on, it doesn't create any change in the mashpia. The mashpia is just doing its thing. The sun just illuminates. That's what the sun does. Okay, the sun is doing its thing. If there's a planet there to receive its light, good for the planet. If there's no planet there to receive its light, the sun is not affected by that. The sun's not affected by that. If you're giving tzedakah and there's no ani, then you're affected by that. Because that means that this piece, if you wanted to give over, now stays by you. Maybe you're happy, or maybe you're not. But that's the reality. When it comes to the sun is doing its thing, and it's completely unchanged by whether or not there is a makabel. Because what is being given over to that makabel is not a piece of the sun, where now the sun has to sort of like hold itself back from giving that piece over because there's no planet to give to. Either way, the sun is not giving itself the etzem to any of the planets. It's doing its thing, and there's an illumination emanating from the sun. So if there are those that are able to receive it, good. If not, it's also fine. It doesn't affect the sun in that way. So he says, for the sun, it makes no difference fundamentally. It doesn't really change the sun whether the light that is emanating from it is received or not. It doesn't make a difference. The kasher are when the sun illuminates. It's not adding to the sun, right? And when it doesn't illuminate, it doesn't take away from the sun. The sun is unaffected by that. Let's say there's sunlight coming, and you put up a shade, right, to block a window, like a sheshanon, or let's say there's clouds, right, sort of like a shade to block the sun. Shein or meir boilers. The sunlight's not getting into the room, or it's not getting to the ground. The sun doesn't mind. You're not affecting the sun. It doesn't make a difference. But this is all by R. Shefa, it's not like that. When it comes to Shefa, when the makabel is not able to receive, then the mashpia is not able to give over, and it affects him. If he wanted to give tzedakah, he's upset by it, and it bothers him, or whatever the hashpah is. He's actually now not a mashpia. He's not a mashpia. Not so with light. The gam ein hashemesh. He says in this thing. The gam ein hashemesh mutra lahoyer ar. And what's the simon to know whether it's shefa or whether it's ar? So it's an interesting thing. How much energy does it take when you're being mashpia? If there's a lot of tirda in your mind in terms of like trying to package it and try to like sort of figure out a way to give it over, that's the calling card of shefa, because the tirda that the mashpia has to go through in order to make sure that the hashpah is received, it's indicative that this is something that he's trying to convey to the makabel, and it actually is affecting the mashpia. It's affecting the mashpia that there is a makabel, and it's affecting the mashpia how to be mashpia. It's not just a ha'ara. The sun doesn't have to work any harder if you put more planets in front of it. It doesn't have to work any harder. But if you're, let's say, giving a shir over, and there's all different types of people listening to the shir, all different levels, then the person giving the shir has to work harder to figure out how to package those ideas that every single person can hear it. Why? Because when you're giving over a shir, there's material in your brain that you're trying to give over to other people. And so by doing so, there's a change in the mashpia because of that, and there's a change in the makal because of that, and there's a thing almost tangible that you could point to. Again, by words, it's not tangible like that, but it's something that is being given over, and because of that, it takes effort on the mashpia's part to package those things in the right way. So if there's one ani that comes to my door, okay, so it takes a certain amount of tirda to get money prepared for that person. The more people come to my door, more tirda. That's because that's shefa. So he says, the gam ein hashemesh mutra lahoyer ar. The shemesh doesn't have to go through any added tirda to illuminate. Sha'ar memela by the light. That's what it does. It illuminates automatically. Its essential nature is to illuminate. Ukamay arhaner, like a candlelight. When you bring a candle into a room, memela bayis meir, the room is automatically illuminated. The nair doesn't have to work any harder to illuminate a room if the room is bigger or not. It doesn't make a difference. So the candle is on the outside, and there's a sun anyway, so it doesn't have to illuminate anything. And then you bring it into a dark room. Is there more energy? Is the wax burning up faster now that it's in a dark room? No, because it doesn't take up any more energy of the candle. The candle is doing its thing; it's illuminating. On the in the sunlight, there's no makablim. Okay, but it's betzim still illuminating. You bring it into a dark room. Okay, now there are makablim. There's a dark room to be illuminated, but the light is just emanating its own light. That's what it's doing. It doesn't take any tirda. So he says, again, all this is because there's no thing of itself that's being given over. It's just a ha'ara. It's an illumination. It's a ha'ara of what it is. So until now, in other words, this difference between shefa and ar is sort of check for shefa. Shefa now is a mila over ar. Why? Because in this context, what are we saying? Is that shefa is what is being given over. It's an actual metzias. It's a something. There's actual money being given over. There's a piece of the person's portfolio that's being given over. The person has a brain and he's a Talmud Chacham. There's a piece of information that's literally a piece of who he is as a Talmud Chacham being given over to other people. And because it's something from the mashpia, an actual piece of the mashpia that's being given over to the makabel, in whatever the context is. Again, obviously, when it comes to a shear, we're talking about a piece of the mashpia in terms of his brain. When it comes to tzedakah, we're talking about a piece of the mashpia in terms of his financial standings. But whatever the context is, it's literally a piece of the mashpia, and that's what's being given over to the makabel. And because of that, it's draining on the mashpia, and it makes a big difference whether there's a makabel or not, and how many makabel there are. And that's all. The mila of hashpa is that what's being given over is literally a piece of the mashpia. Not so with R. The reason why R light, the candlelight, doesn't take up any energy more when it's illuminating a bigger room, is because the candle's not giving back some of itself. It's not taking a piece of itself and giving it to the room. What the room is gaining is just a hara. It's an offshoot. It's derech acharayim. It's an offshoot of what the candle is doing. It's not a piece of itself being given over. So in this context, it would seem that shefa is much more of a deeper, a more a more intense level of hashpa. Amnam, this is what the Rashab ends off. Amnam, Yishmael Yiseir Bar Lagabi Shefa. But on the other hand, there is a very deep mila when it comes to a relationship of R versus a relationship of Shefa. How so? Shahar hu me'en hamar. Shahar hu me'en hamar. Because it's like this. When it comes to light, although it's true, it's not like a piece of the mashpia being given over to the makabel. Rather, it's only a ha'ara ba'alma. It's a sort of a secondary influence that the candle is doing. But whatever influence it's able to give over is of the same type as itself, of its inner self. So, in other words, he says like this: like the sun. The light that comes off of the sun. See, it's interesting. Let's go to Shefa for a second, right? So, let's say the Talmud Chacham is giving over his shear. So it's Shefa. It's something from his brain being given over. But because it's a something of his brain that's being given over, it has to be so packaged and so constricted and so manipulated in order to be received by the Makablim, that very often it's really, although it came from the Mashpia, it's not reflective of everything the Mashpia is. Even if let's say the Mashpia is giving a shear, whatever it is, and the people are able to hear him on a very high level, but it's still only one side of his Chachma. It's only one side of his Chachma. And more than that, even within the bigger picture of who the person is, it's only his Chachma. And let's say tzedakah is the same thing. So the guy has a portfolio about all. He has real estate, he has this, he has all sorts of stuff. And the guy gives $1 to tzedakah. So that $1 tzedakah is a something. But it's only a piece of one aspect of this guy's portfolio. He's not giving real estate to the ani that comes to the door. So in other words, when you have this mila of shefa, because it's so concrete and it's so specific, like this is what it is, so because of that, it can't be reflective of everything the mashpia is either. Because by its very definition, the makabel is not going to be as big as the mashpia. And so when the mashpia is giving an actual something to the makabel, by its very definition, it's going to be limited with how reflective it is in terms of who the mashpia is, b'derech klal. Not so with light. Because light is not trying to give something to the room, it's being itself. And automatically the room is picking up on that. Then what the room is picking up on might not be anything tangible, but at least what it's picking up on is a very strong, authentic version of the light itself. And so the sun is not doing anything harder in order to illuminate planet Earth more than it's doing to illuminate Mars. It's not doing anything harder. And because of that, what the planets are picking up from the sun might not be like a piece of the sun itself. True. But whatever it is that we are picking up on is reflective of the entirety of the sun, of who the sun is in its very, very root, in its very, very essence. So you have this interesting dynamic that R is true, is there's a chesaron in terms of the tangibility of what the hashpa is. But on the other hand, whatever you're able to pick up on in terms of light is reflective of the very essence of who the mashpia is, not just a piece, not just an aspect. It's similar. I'll give you a similar example. Let's say you have a rabbi, I'm sure we've had this, or wished we did, or whatever the case may be, where you have like a Rebbe that you really like in yeshiva. And so there's always two different things. You sit by a shir and he has questions. You could gain a lot like that. And then there's always like, going to his house for a Shabbos meal. You know what I mean? Or seeing him in his natural habitat. That's a different type of experience. Why? When he's doing it, when he's in his natural habitat, he's not necessarily focused on being mashpia on you. He's taking care of his kids, whatever it is that he's doing, right? He's he's going whatever the situation is. So in terms of shefa, very limited. You definitely pick up on more shefa if you're sitting by the shir. But in terms of R, that's something else, because R is trying to glean a little bit of a picture of who that person is in totality, and to experience that. And in order for that to happen, ironically, that's the Rosh Hashiva, whatever the case may be, cannot be focused on being mashpia at that moment in order to be authentic, right? So it's like a catch-22. When he's in mashpia mode, all you're getting is shefa. When he's just being his authentic self, he's not being mashpia, but that's when, and because of that, you might not get something, but at least you'll get a sense of everything. Exactly. So the truth is, even when it comes to real Talmidei Chachamim and big tzaddikim, so Chazal say afilu sikas chulin, right? Even their regular conversations, tzarich limud, so you can learn things. So by a big tzaddik and a Talmid Chacham, so even when you're just hanging out and the person's in an R situation, there's shefa coming too. That's true. But fundamentally, gadol shimusha yaisem elimuda is this nakuda. It's like there's something deeper and greater to when you're just in the person's auspices. It's interesting. You mentioned that Chazal gadol shimusha. There's I'm not going to mention names, but there's a certain famous Rosh Hashiva who has a lot of famous students. So I heard this from one of his students, that this Rosh Hashiva was traveling and he landed in the airport or whatever it is, and he needed to get a ride to get home or whatever. So one of his Talmidim came to pick him up. So this Talmud is a big masbid, a big Talmid Chacham himself. So Rosh Hashiva said, why are you wasting your time picking me up at the airport? So the Talmud said, Gadol Shimusha Yasem Limuda. So the Rosh Hashiva said, that's not what it means. It means that when you look at the hanhag of a tzaddik, you're able to learn halachas from it. Because in those days there was no Shulchan Aruch, so you had to what's halacha l'maisa. You had to visit the Rosh Hashiva's home to hang out with him to see what halacha l'maisa. How do we fear so? So Gadol Shimush is just another, it's just another form of shefa, like another shpia. The Klal Yisrael doesn't use it like that. Klal Yisrael, when we say Gadol Shimush it means shamish d'amachacha, to pick them up by the airport. You're not going to learn any you're not learning anything by driving him to the airport. So in the world of shefa, it's a waste of time. In the world of R, it's mamish kedai, because then you're seeing the tzaddik in his natural habitat, so to speak, and just being in that auspices, there's a certain level of hashpah. It's only ha'ara ba'alma. Mask is only ha'ara ba'alma, but that ha'ara is reflective of the etzem, and so that's the difference. So he says again, let's just see it inside. Amnam yesh ma'ila yiseir ba'ar l'gabi shefa. There is a mile of R versus shefa. That what sha'ar hu me'en hama'ar. The R that you're picking up on is me'en hama'ar. It's reflective of the essence of the luminary. U'kamay ar v'sev hashemesh hu me'en hashemesh shu bihiri. And I was like, it's not a random thing that the sun gives off sunlight and it doesn't give off lollipops, because any illumination that's coming off of the sun is going to be me'en, the sun itself. V'lachein ha'ar me'er. Sharei ein hashpa el azulas k'may she'yedea oisei ein guful atzmai. Whenever there's hashpa, or let's say when it comes to chachma, the what is being given over is never the same as the mashpia understands it in his own mind. Like if the sun can talk and if the sun had to, if the sun saw a photon beam of itself making its way to planet Earth, the sun would recognize it. But very often, if you're a mashpia and you're giving over Torah, and you could, like when someone hears it and says it back over to you, you're thinking to yourself, I don't know what he's talking like. That's l'chlal, not So that doesn't happen with the sun, right? It doesn't happen with the sun, because whatever is being given over, the sun recognizes that's me. Like I see that. When it comes to shef, is lavdavka. The chef of them might be completely redefined by the time it gets to the makabel, that it's unrecognizable to the mashpia. It doesn't mean it's not true, Doesn't mean it's not good or unproductive, but it might not be recognizable. It could be it's not recognizable because it's been fakromt. That could be. Or it could be not recognizable because it's been so constricted and so watered down that the mashpia doesn't recognize it anymore. So like the Maisa with Rebbe Akiva, like according to Shuas Night, with the Maisa Rebbe Akiva, right there with Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe is by Rebbe Akiva's shear, and he's 8 rows back, doesn't understand what's going on. So what is it? He doesn't understand what's going on. The answer is, Rebbe Akiva's Torah was Torah Shebal Peh compared to Moshe Rabbeinu's Torah Shebal. It's so constricted and it's so packaged, it's unrecognizable to the mashpia at that point. Until Rebbe Akiva says, Lochem Moshe Sinai. Okay, so it's like, okay, that brought it back a little bit, but it wasn't even a chap this year. It was so packaged and so different than where its origin point was. That always happens with Shefa. It doesn't happen with R. R will always recognize itself because even if it's a piece, a small tiny photon compared to the sun, but it sees itself. That's what it is. That's what it is. So he says, when it comes to Ashba, even everything has to change almost to take on a new form. Certainly it's going to be, it's going to be similar. It should be the same sugya. If a guy's giving a shir about Bas B'cholav and the Talmud, repeats it back to him, and it's like, now it's completely something else. It's obviously the guy wasn't paying attention. So it has to be Lefi Oifen, it has to be the same, sugya, but altogether different. So let's go back. The Rebbe Akiva says to the Klal Yisrael that we should be an Or Lagai. What does it mean to be an Or Lagai? Not Shefa Lagai, Or Lagai. Or Lagai is this Nakuda. Or Lagai, so again, we had starting from the beginning, there's two things. We're mechuyev to teach materials called Shados V'Ninoich, 100%. That's not Or Lagai. Or Lagai is something else. Or Lagai is to be illuminating and to just be mayor. To be mayor, like to be a candle, to be like the sunlight. And in that context, the Goyim, the nation that are picking up on this, it just like the candlelight, it doesn't take up any more energy to illuminate a darker room or a smaller room or bigger room. And it doesn't really bother the candle either whether there's makabim or not, because the candle is doing its thing. It's being mayor in such a way. That's exactly our relationship with the nations of the world. That's what needs to be in our Lagoyim. Besides the influence that we have, which is tangible, Shabbos Noach, or any other, specific tangible, actual chef that we give to them, the overarching covenant that we were given on Bris Ben Efsarim by Hargriz Ben Harival is this seen as being an Or Lagai. In other words, it's not. This is the oimik of what we're saying now, as opposed to taking it beyond from last week. And last week it was like you have to be mashpia. But in order to be mashpia in such a way that the Goyim don't make a pogrom about it, they have to feel and sense that it's coming from a place of love and a place of iskashus and a place of yichud. That's true. But now we're saying it's more than that. The definition of Or Lagai means that there's really not, it's not even so much to give over, that like in order to make sure that it's being given over properly, it has to be coming from a place of yichud within yourself. It's not even so much of a chiyuv of being mashpia. It's kulay a chiyuv of being in a place of yichud. And when you are illuminating, when you are a chefetz of yichud, then automatically there's illumination that comes off of that, and that illumination will be picked up on the nations of the world without having to say anything. So the chiyuv of Or Lagai is this nakud. It's not just figuring out. It's not just having the yichud of Yiddishkeit and the essence of Yiddishkeit in the backdrop in order to make sure that the ashba is received healthfully. Being an Or Lagai means that you're a kulei mayor, that everything about you is yichud, and memela that comes across. That just comes across, and people pick up on that. What they pick up on is nothing specific. There's nothing specific, but what they pick up on is a reflection of the essence. That's the nekuda. In other words, again, it's not just that there is an essence that's called the yichud k'shabrichu, and that is the engine that's driving all the pratim of Yiddishkeit, and the pratim is what we're giving over, but because it's based on that engine of yichud, so it's received healthfully. It's more than that. It means, a light means that what is being given over is me'en hama'ar. It's me'en hama'ar. In other words, it's what's being given over is essentially recognizable to the mashpia. If you're teaching the nations of the world the pratim that they have to hear, then by the time it's given over to them, it might not be even recognizable to a Shomer Torah mitzvahs, to the mashpia himself. But when it comes to an Or L'Goyim, the influence that we give over should be recognizable to us. Why? Because what we're not giving over anything. We're illuminating. We're pulsating with a sense of yichud, and that sense of yichud is what the Goyim can pick up on. So here's the chiddush: not only is our obligation to be mashpia into the nations of the world what they have to hear to the Shem, our obligation is to give them a glimpse and a connection to the deepest essence of Yiddishkeit. That's called Yichud B'Shchinte. But that opening, that window into the world of Yichud B'Shchinte, is by its very definition has to take place in a way of Or, not a way of Shefa. So this is the difference. There are things that you teach the nations of the world, and when you teach the nations of the world, those are Shefa Dik Inyanim, and Shefa Dik Inyanim, in order for it to be received, have to be coming from a place of yichud. But then there's something else. In that model, all they're getting are the details that they have to live by, which is fine and very good. And again, like we said from last time for Rav Kook, and if it's coming from a place within yourself, you perceive rules and regulations as an expression of yichud, then they'll be receptive to it. Fine. But at the end of the day, that means that they're still left out in the cold in terms of experiencing the yichud, because all they're getting are the rules and regulations, which again is receivable because by you it's coming from yichud. But what about them and experiencing yichud? Can they experience yichud? The answer is they can experience yichud in a way of Or. Or means that they're not that the yichud is emanating out of you ad kidei kach, that it's encompassing everything around you as well. And will they be able to articulate what they're receiving? No. Will they become, and this is also the Nakuda, by the way, one of the differences between Shefa and Or, Rashab and other places talks about this, is that Shefa, even when the Hashpah is over, the Makabel still has it. I give him $1, so he walks away, he has the $1. I give a shear over, the Talmud has the shear, and even after I stop talking, he still has it. Not so with light. Once the candle is extinguished, the room goes back to dark. Because the whole hashpah was never something from the candle being given over to the room. It was an illumination of the candle itself. And so again, there's a mile in that, in terms of the room is able to experience an authentic experience of the candle itself. But on the other hand, when the candle is extinguished, the light has no shaykhis to it. So the nations of the world also have to have a shaykhis to the world of Yichud Kudsha B'Shchinte. But they can't have it on their own. They only can have it not just by us giving it to them. They can only have it as being part of our environment and experiencing what we're deeply experiencing and seeing the illumination of that. But once our candle goes, oh chas v'shalom, then they're certainly left in the dark as well. That's what it means to be an Or L'Goyim. This is the type of hashpah that's wordless. It's without words. And you're not giving anything over. You're pulsating with light. And Memela, everyone around you is gleaming from that light. And it's completely dependent on you. And this is what it means to be an Or L'Goyim. This is what was happening by Har Grizim and Har Evel. Now let's go back to where we started. Rebbe Akiva. So Rebbe Akiva. Rebbe Akiva's the very essence of Nishmas Rebbe Akiva is this inyan of what? Of not being mashpia in a healthy way. The whole name Rebbe Akiva is Or. Right? Everyone knows how do you spell the name Akiva? So there's different ways, an aleph or a hey. So it's well known, a remez, that the Sefer Or Zerua, that's why he calls it the Sefer Or Zerua, because it was Niskalat in this Inyan, which is an interesting thing, that Or Zerua Latzadik, Ul Yishu Leiv Simcha, Saif Tevis, Rebbe Akiva. Or Zerua Latzadik, Ul Yishu Leiv Simcha. That's the pasuk that hints to Nishmas Rebbe Akiva, because Rebbe Akiva is light. What do you mean Rebbe Akiva is light? The whole thing Rebbe Akiva is not to be that there's an end of Yichud inside, that's the engine of Yiddishkeit, and Rebbe Akiva knows that. But then that is the source of where all the Gedarim and all the rules and regulations are coming from. And because Rebbe Akiva knows and he's saying over the rules and regulations with a sense of Ahava, people can hear it. That's true, but that's not the Omek of Nishmas Rebbe Akiva. The Omek of Nishmas Rebbe Akiva is that it's Kuliyar. That everything is Yichud. Everything is Yichud. All the Pratim are just part of it. It's all Yichud. And everyone that's picking up on, and everyone in the orbit of Rebbe Akiva is just experiencing that light that's emanating from him. Now, once the light is extinguished, then it goes back to being a dark room. Masking. But that's the greatness of Rebbe Akiva. Or Zerulat Tzaddik. This is why Nishmas Rebbe Akiva was deeply rooted in what? That's what the Ishmael said. What? Nishmas Rebbe Akiva is what? It's not the teaching Torah. Teaching a Barabim. What's in teaching a Barabim? Teaching a Barabim means to be an Or, to illuminate. Shefa, again, the nature of our is that it illuminates. So if you were to tell a candle, don't light up the room. There's no such thing. You can tell a Talmud Chacham, don't give a shir. Okay, it's painful, it's hard, okay. But by the mitzias, you can't tell a candle not to illuminate. That's what Rebbe Akiva is saying. I'm a candle, I'm an or. You can't, there's no such thing. The only way for a candle not to illuminate is if there's no candle. That's Rebbe Akiva. The whole Torah of Rebbe Akiva, which is the root of Torah Shpal Peh, is what? Is just illuminating the world, right? Or the pasuk says, talking about Torah Shpal Peh, that Torah Shpal Peh is a way to illuminate the path of life. We're not sure what to do, this way, that way. So Torah Shpal Peh illuminates. Torah Shpal Peh means taking things that until now have been completely outside of the influence of Torah, let's say human intellect, or complicated situations in life. And Ladra was saying, no, that's part of Torah. It's part of it. I don't see any contradiction at all. It's part of the sugya. Life is part of the sugya. That's what Torah Shpal Peh does. That's what Rebbe Akiva was. It's Dafka Rebbe Akiva that's Megala, this Inyan of Har Grizman and Har Evel. Rebbe Akiva is that, again, let's understand, the oimik, what we're learning today, this morning is that the oimik of Har Grizman and Har Evel is, even in the Nitziv's world, it's really a deeper bond. It's a new revelation for Klal Yisrael, because what it's saying is to Klal Yisrael is that not only do you have an obligation to have rules and regulations and remember that it's coming from a place of yichud, it has to be kula yichud. Like everything just has to be yichud, and because of that, since it's all just encompassed in that experience of yichud kishb'shchinte, and this prat halacha is just another expression of that yichud, and this prat halacha is another. The chefza, it's all yichud. In other words, what Har Grizman Evil says that you have to be a candles. The mitzias of being a candle, and the mitzias of being a candle is that it's kulei light. It's kulei light, and it's kulei meir. It kulei illuminates. That's what it has to be. And so memela, when you're in such a situation, then the world around you will also be illuminated by that. But it doesn't take any more tirda. It doesn't take it because that's who you are. There's a chiv of Har Grizman Evil is not just to have yichud as in the backdrop and then be a good mashpia. The chiv of Har Grizman Evil is to be an or, to be Rebbe Akiva. And this is what you find in Rebbe Akiva himself. Take a look at Marmuk number 4. So this is a piece from Rav Kook, Oils Raya, in Shir Shirim. So everyone knows that Shir Shirim is it's the whole Sefer Yehoshua. That's all it is. So Rebbe Akiva, Rebbe Akiva is a Chazal say. Rebbe Akiva said, "Ein kol kedai kidem shenitin by Shir Shirim liYisrael." The whole world is not kedai. Like the greatest day of all that really overshadows any other days, day that Shir Shirim was given to us. Really, Har Sinai, basically everything was overshadowed by the day of the giving of Shir Shirim, which was the day of the Beis Hamikdash, but he's defining it as really the day of Shir Shirim. Why? So it says Rav Kook like this: Yesh ahava l'shem Hashem yisparach shemitzad habriya v'hoida. There's a certain love and attachment we can have with Hashem because He created the world and it's a beautiful place. And Chesed Hashem Malei Olam, Betuvi Al Briyosav, Karsatayv, all these good things, right? And that could be a source of ahava. The Yesh ahava kazayis, but there's another type of ahava. Shemregeshes b'nefesh mitzad etzem malas and nefesh le'av esatayv agam. There's another level of ahava that it's just a hiskashus, it's b'meila. It's the same species that the neshama and God is just min b'minai. It's not because God does this. In other words, it's the same thing with God. Like when the Rabbanu Shalom, there's a way to look at Hashem as the mashpia. As Hashem is where He is, where we are. Hashem gives good things to us. So Hashem gives hashpah to us. He gives us dollars, and He gives us nice ideas. So we love Him back. That when a person's in a shefatik mode, so you see Hashem in shefa. But then there's another thing Rav Kook is saying that even Hashem is or. What is that? Hashem is not like giving. Hashem is just being good. Hashem is good. Hashem is light. The world, reality is illuminated by Hashem's light. And so, in that mode, then we are just illuminated by Him, and that's what we are. It's a oneness. It's a yichud. The light of the room is synonymous with the light coming from the candle. It's the same thing. It's not like the candle is giving something a decision. It's all one big experience. That's the love that a person can reach with the Havas Hashem. V'hava, as I say, Ikar Hava. That's the main love. The main attachment we have with Hashem is to see Hashem as the candle that's illuminating the universe. That's a much deeper Hava and more precious than a love that's gained by focusing on the Shefa that Hashem gives us. And to really capture and in detail and to sort of paint a picture of this type of love. That's what Shir Hashirim is trying to convey. Shir Hashirim is trying to convey a world that's being illuminated by the candle, which is God. Not a world that's being given good things by Hashem, but the Rebbe Hashem is light. And if you want to, and to whatever degree you have light in your life, that's the light of Hashem. That's what Shir Hashirim is trying to capture. That's what the whole world is not kedai like that day, because the whole world is redefined based on that day. Instead of the world being a place that we get shefa from, it's a place that's partially illuminated by Hashem's light. And who was the one to say this? Rebbe Akiva. Because Rebbe Akiva Betzim is a chetz of light. And so it's Dafka Rebbe Akiva that's able to reveal this truth that Hashem's relationship to us is kuli ar. Torah has to be learned in a way of ar, that it automatically has to be barabim. And if it's not influencing the outside, then it's a chesaron in your light. In other words, that's the nakuda. If the person is not illuminating, then either there's no one around you, okay, then it's not your fault. But if there are people around you, then you have to illuminate them. And if you don't illuminate them, it means you're not a candle. So you could be a good. So maybe you're mashpia and you're not, and you're choosing not to be mashpia. But if you're a candle, then automatically you'd illuminate. And if you're not illuminating, it means you're not being a good candle. So Rebbe Akiva sees Rebbe Hashem as a candle. Rebbe Akiva sees Torah as a candle, and Rebbe Akiva sees Klal Yisrael as a candle to the nations of the world. Dafka Rebbe Akiva is one to reveal Har Grizman Har Evel, that we were makabel on ourselves to live Yichud K'Shabrichu Shchintei. What does Yichud K'Shabrichu Shchintei mean? Yichud K'Shabrichu means the same. The depth of a Yichud means it's one Inyan. It means that any light that we experience is a light of the candle. Anything that the Shechina has is K'Shabrichu. That's what it means, Yichud K'Shabrichu Shchintei. Rebbe Akiva was Megala, that's how a Jew has to live. That's what Yiddishkeit truly is. And Memela, because of that, you'll be an Or Lagayin. Like what the Nitzvah says, that part of Har Grizman Har Evel is to mashpia to the outside world, but not mashpia, is to illuminate the outside world. And that comes with seeing yourself and seeing Yiddishkeit, seeing the world as Pasha candle. You have that automatically it's things are being illuminated. We'll just end off very, very quickly. The last piece over here, again, it's part of that Torah that Rav Kook says in his Akdama to Shir Hashirim. So he says, it's just a beautiful, it says, Tahari Leiv Yirus Rebbe Akiva Godlai, those that have a pure heart can see a glimpse of the greatness of Rebbe Akiva. It's Rebbe Akiva HaMesachek, Rebbe Akiva who's laughing, Kisharoy Shashul Yotzim Beis Kodesh HaKodshen. Rebbe Akiva who's laughing when a fox is coming out of the Kodesh HaKodshen. Why is he laughing? Because the perspective of such a giant neshama, the distant future is right in front of his face. When you're so tall, you can see things from a distance, right? So like Rebbe Akiva is such a giant that to him, the years of Golus is okay. He already sees Gula. It's already a foregone conclusion. The pleasurable love that Rebbe Akiva sees in that absolute future of Mashiach, fills his pure hearts to such a degree, it doesn't leave any room for any darkness. Again, you see this, even Rebbe Akiva in terms of his own personal dealing with tsaras, it was also a way of light. Again, there's darkness, there's something terrible, and there's gula, there's something good. So gula should be mashpia on darkness. It's like try to find something good and kudatayv, things like that, which is gavaldik and great. Rebbe Akiva is deeper than that. Rebbe Akiva is kuli meir. Geula is a candle, and automatically it illuminates the room that you're in, which is called galus. It's not mashpia to the room. It illuminates the room. Now it is true, if chas v'shalom, a person, if the candle goes out and the room is back to being dark, there's a mile of shef in that way. But Rebbe Akiva's inyan is ar. So he says, Sheikiroi raka'av kal apnei acham habar b'shchak. Rebbe Akiva sees galus as nothing more than just a cloud covering the beautiful sun, the beautiful sky. Rak mimakar oisa nefesh. And dafka from the root of such a neshama, shenishmas yatsa be'echad, that his neshama leaves his body with the word echad, yatsa hachlata, from that person, from that neshama comes out the clear, decisive decision, shekol aksuvim kodesh, V'shir shirim kadosh kadosh. That's Rebbe Akiva. Rebbe Akiva is mamash an or. That's why Chazal say kula liud Rebbe Akiva, right? All of Tarsh Peh comes from Rebbe Akiva, but Mishnayos, which is certainly the ikar, the fundamentals of Tarsh Peh, come specifically. Rabbeinu Kodesh used the Mishnayos of one of the Talmidei Rebbe Akiva to be the backbone of Mishnayos. And which Tana was that? Reb Meir. Because that's the meaning of Tarsh Peh. That's the Tarsh Rebbe Akiva. That's what Yiddishkeit is supposed to be. A mayor, an luminary, something that anything that you gain from is a reflection of the ma'ar, of the illumination itself. That's what Tarsh Peh is. No? Okay, we should be zeicha to be a good Ar L'Goyim, and the way to do that is to live kula yichad, to see the Rebbe Shalom as mamish, one with the Bria, one with Mitzias, all of Mitzias is alive, like the Rambam begins Mishnah Torah. Anything that exists is because Hashem's existence. That's the root of that. That's Torah's Rebbe Akiva is from that. That's all of Tarsh Peh is rooted on that first statement of the Rambam, that everything, Mitzias is existing as an extension of God's existence. Hashem is a candle, and it doesn't take him any more energy to create the world. The fact that it doesn't take energy of God to create the world is because the world is not shefa. It's illuminated from his existence. And the light that we're experiencing is Hashem's light. It's yichud. That's yichud kishb'shchinte. That is mamash oneness. When you have that, the Torah is like that, Yidden are like that, Gol Segul is like that, and from there, should be an Ar L'Goyim. Okay? We should be to experience that. Beinayim Gashmi, V'Yizkal Tzedek, Me'er V'Yemeinu Amen. I accidentally stopped the recording after 10 minutes and I restarted it.
Okay.
So I think it should be 2 then.
Oh, okay. No problem. So I can press done, right?
So it's probably 2 recordings. One is 10 minutes. But whatchamacallit? Okay, so let's learn. So
I don't know how to join them.
No, it's fine. Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah. So you send me both.
Sorry.
You guys have a good day.